Hello everybody, my name is Dave Oaks. I've got a company called Dave Oaks Seminars, and some of you have actually heard me before or heard of me before. For the last several years I've been teaching this presentation skills class. It's called Public Speaking Without Fear and Anxiety. I've been teaching it to Hunter Ed organizations now for years, concentrating on the volunteers. Now, the interesting thing about this, and this started a while ago, in the middle of the United States, but there's not a more committed group of people, in my opinion, than Hunter Ed volunteers, and I think you'll agree with me. But there's many of them. I would say, I kind of hesitant to pick a number, but just from what I've talked to, maybe 2/3, maybe a little bit more. They're committed, but they're just not very good instructors. They just don't know the techniques, or I'll bet even some of you in this room right here, as many times as you presented. Well, let me ask you, does anybody still get a little bit nervous when you present sometimes, speaking in public? I mean, even as many times as I do, 100 days a year, when I don't do something for a few weeks, I can even get a little bit nervous. So what we're going to talk about today, just let me walk you through this workbook real quick, and I'm going to show you the 4 sections we're going to do. The whole thing is probably going to last around 3 to 3.5 hours. The very first section that you'll see is on page number 1. It's called Solutions for Anxiety. We're going to talk about how to overcome just the nervousness. And it's not too big a section, but it's very important because if you want, there's a definite strategy you can use to overcome your nervousness. Then on page number 5, we're going to talk about how to plan a powerful presentation, how to put a presentation together. And even though there are manuals that you follow, the one thing that bothers me a little bit from the Hunter Ed instructors that I've seen is I don't like them teaching from the workbook. Now, I know you're looking at me maybe a little bit weird. I want you to teach the content, but I want you to have your own outline that you teach from so that it's easier to read. Sometimes people, when they teach from the workbook, they tend to read a little bit too much, and as you know as well as I do, that can be a little bit boring. Then after that, and that's going to be a fairly long section. Then after that section, if you move forward to page number, page number 17, control the presentation environment. And when I started presenting, I've been doing this now for about 17 years. I never thought about some of this stuff in my entire life. Anywhere from the temperature of the room to the room setup, how to do breaks and all this kind of stuff. That's going to be the 3rd section. And then the last section is the psychology of a confident delivery. Kind of goes along with the very first one. That's on page number 25, and that talks about appearance, body language, tonality, how to get them enrolled in activities, and how to use humor for your presentation. So you can see it's a 4-part program, and you can watch one or all the parts if you want to, but the whole point is to make people a little bit better. Now, here's what I want you to do, though, to start off, and some of you know each other, some of you don't, but I would like you to get into groups, and I want you to do a couple exercises for me. So if the front row could turn around with the second row, and then the next row, you could just talk amongst yourselves, okay? And then you folks just talk amongst yourselves. So we have a group here, a small group, and we have 2 groups here. I would like one person in each group to take notes if you could. So decide who the note taker is going to be. Just point at somebody. But what, yes, there you go. That's the exercise. But what I want you to do is I want you to make 2 columns for me on that piece of paper. You can actually use, but the bottom of page 1 is fine, or the bottom of page 2, either one. But I want you to make 2 columns for me. One of the columns that I want you to come up with is come up with a list, in your own opinion, of what are the advantages for a person watching this to want to be better. When I talk to people about change all over this country, do you agree with me that most people, that you can't make somebody change? Do you agree with that? And I joke around with married folks all the time. You can't make them change if they don't want to change. But my point is if there's an advantage in it for somebody, they're probably going to want to change. So what do you think the advantages for a person would be to be better? Because you folks are very experienced, I know that, and you have a lot of knowledge. Second column is, what are the challenges that a Hunter Ed instructor faces in their classes? What are some things when you teach a class that people need to learn to overcome? So I'm going to give you 3 minutes to talk amongst yourselves, and then we'll talk about it as a class. Challenges and advantages. All right, folks, let's see what you have here. Go ahead and get comfortable. You can turn back around. Make sure each group has a spokesperson. We're going to go over your list and see what you got. How about got my guys in the back? You got anything on the advantages back there? Give me two things you came up with, the advantages.
Cooperation and networking.
Cooperation amongst the team?
Yes.
Okay, and then networking?
Learning more information.
Oh, just learning more information from other people? Okay, tremendous. What did you guys have for advantages? Give me a couple.
Most people want to be there.
Okay, you mean most of the students want to be there?
They want to be there, they want to take the course.
Okay, so that from the standpoint of when you speak, you shouldn't be as nervous because they want to hear what you have to say?
So that
I agree.
opens a path
I agree.
for your information to get to them.
I agree. Have you folks ever heard somebody say this? And just picture the people that you're talking to, picture them in their underwear. Isn't that illegal on some level? Yeah, and you got an interesting point because I've always said this. Actually, you're the first guy in a while that has said this, is nobody wants you to succeed more than the people that you're talking to. Isn't that true? I mean, have you ever been to a seminar and you're just dreading the fact that you have to go there because the person or the topic is boring? So that's a real good point. What did you have for an advantage? Give me a couple.
One is keeping the audience captivated.
Okay. If you're good, you can keep the audience entertained more. Okay.
And then just learning to talk so
Okay.
that you can have confidence when you're before people.
And let me tell you this, and I do think this is a side benefit, because there are, all the Hunter Ed volunteers aren't retired, are they?
No.
Are there a bunch of them that still work?
Oh, yeah.
Can I tell you something? You still work?
Oh, yeah.
You look like a retired man.
Thank you. I've
No?
never been called older, just younger.
No, I said retired. But listen, this is not scientific, but I do teach this topic about 20 or 25 times a year. I believe for those people that still work, if you are tied with somebody for advancement in an organization and you're good at presenting and they're not, I believe 999 times out of 1,000 you'll get the nod because so many people hate to present. So it's not only good for the class, it's good for your personal life. I think that's great. How about you folks? You got any advantages? You come up with something? I know that you are an active group.
What you just said was number one on my list.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, well go ahead and read it off to me. What'd you say?
I said to present better helps you in all areas of your life, especially in your business life. If you're professional or whatever, being able to present, you get your ideas across better,
Yes,
and it's better all around in your career and your personal life.
I don't know if you've ever had to speak in front of your church before, but that can be nerve-wracking. So just having the ability to stand up and not look stupid in front of 200 people, 300 people that you know is really big too.
And the biggest thing I think is if you are better at teaching, then your students will get more out of it.
I think
And
that's
the thing
the
is,
big
that's
thing,
the whole
isn't it?
point.
It is.
We're trying to teach them to be safe and all this. We want them to learn.
What is the ultimate goal of a Hunter Ed class?
Safety.
Safety, isn't it? That's really the bottom line. And the tough part, I believe, and it's for me when I teach and for you as well, teaching it, you can give good information, isn't it right? You can motivate, you can be persuasive, but it's getting them to actually use the stuff when you leave, and I think that is a real technique that Hunter Ed instructors need to learn to do. Yes, sir.
You got to believe in your product.
Yes, sir.
In other words, if you don't believe in what you're teaching,
Right.
You're not going to sell it, and you're basically selling it just like you would if you're down on that floor down there. If you don't believe in your product, you're going to have a hard time selling it.
They'll be able to see through, don't you think, if you're not telling the truth. Any other advantages? Does anybody have another one we didn't mention so far? That's a pretty good list.
Well, just keeping continuity in the teaching.
Okay. As far as information, you mean?
Well, as you're giving information, not the ums and ahs, but
Oh,
being able to continually
okay.
stay on.
All right,
subjects.
be decent so people pay attention to you. Now, what are some challenges that people have in class? We're going to start with this group in the back here first. Give me a couple things that an instructor will face.
Students that think that they know everything there is about hunter safety, and you're not going to teach them anything.
Okay.
But they have to be there to get their hunter safety card.
Are they older students? Can they be older sometimes?
It varies, but a lot of them are in their 20s and 30s.
Right.
Think that they know it all.
Right. How do you handle somebody that comes in there that thinks they know something? Thinks they know everything. You know what I like to do? When I teach a class, part of the introduction, whether it's the team leader that you have, does anybody here teach a class alone? Some people teach alone. That's actually a little bit easier because there's more continuity from your side, but even if I'm a leader of a team, I'll acknowledge right off the bat if I can look around the room, and I've talked to some people beforehand and I can tell usually by people the way their body language. I know many of you come into this class with a lot of knowledge. I bet you've probably been out before, you've probably hunted. Some of you probably think you know maybe even more than the instructors, and you probably do know a lot, but it's not really knowing, it's not really your knowledge, it's doing everything the right way. So I just want to say I appreciate your knowledge, and maybe we can find a way to work together, but it's not really having to know everything. It's your perspective of knowing how to do things in a safe way. So I bring it right up the bat that I can recognize it, so that it's not really an issue at any point later on.
Trying to make it non-adversarial.
Absolutely. Just like if I'll ask, I'll joke around with folks and say, how many folks here in this class do not want to be here today? Your boss made you come. You're a captive. Usually about 20 or 30% of who I teach doesn't want to be there. I bring it up right away. And I just tell them, well, I'm glad you're here. Just relax, because I can't change you if you don't want to be changed. But you're here for the 8 hours or 10 hours or 12 hours or however long we're going to be here over the course of 2 or 3 days. I just tell people to listen with an open mind, because your mind's like a parachute. If it's not open, it's not going to work. All right? When you leave here and you decide to not even take the exam, you just want to find out what's going on, that's fine. Just relax and enjoy yourself. It's a good time. But I bring it right out in the open, because I don't want to have that under the surface at all later on when I teach a class. What do you have for challenges?
Language.
It's English is a second language for many folks?
Yeah.
Okay.
We also have the age barrier, because we can't have 9-year-olds and
Is that the youngest? 9-year-olds?
7.
7-year-olds? Okay, it can be some 7, 8, 9, sometimes 10. And then you have a range too, don't you? Don't you have a 10-year-old in a class and you have a 60-year-old in the class? And you have somebody that's never even held a firearm before, and you have people that have hunted in other states but haven't hunted here before. So who do you talk to in that case?
Both.
You talk to both, but you talk to who mostly though? 10-year-old or a 60-year-old?
The group.
You'd be surprised how much young people and older folks have in common. I'm a youth minister.
But the language, the term, you're right, but here's what I'm talking about. It's sometimes it's acronyms, terminology, slang that some younger kids might not know that older folks know. The answer what I was looking for here is you do talk, you're right, you talk to everybody, you talk to both of them, but I try to gear it a little bit more towards and making sure the younger person is really picking up. I talk to everybody, but I'm really paying attention. If I have somebody in my class and English is a second language, now you can tell I talk faster than many people do. I'm a pretty fast talker. But I will talk more slowly and look at them to make sure they understand and can follow me. Have you ever had somebody in a class that's hearing impaired before? Mm-hmm. Have you ever had somebody with them signing while you're teaching? You have to watch how fast you speak. And I look very clearly at the person signing so they can see me and hear me, and then the person that has hearing impaired so they can read my lips a little bit more clearly. So you do talk to everybody, but I do try to pay attention to specific people. What's another challenge you see along the way?
Delivery.
What do you mean by that?
How you get the message to your users.
That's a challenge? You mean, are you talking about show and tell, or whether you read or not? Knowledge of the subject?
And your knowledge, their knowledge, and how you get it across
Yeah.
to them. And that could go back to the age group.
It is.
So the delivery on
Okay, delivery's good.
Your environment's another one.
What do you mean by that?
Well, been in classrooms before where there's an archery thing going on the other side of the little bitty folding ball, and they're thunking and doing it.
And it's loud.
And there's
Yeah.
music going off over the speakers up above your head.
Right. That's exactly
It's hot
right.
or it's cold or
Yeah.
whatever.
If it's too hot, they fall asleep. Well, yes, sir.
This is both. I try to work in a little bit of humor to help my delivery, because I feel more at ease.
Are you a funny guy?
Some people say no. But it does help the class if I can throw a honest ha-ha in.
Right.
Like, real quick.
Yeah.
The old way of snake bite, you cut where the snake bit.
Uh-huh.
You don't do that anymore. You make the person calm, treat the shock, call for help. But you mark where the snake was bit. I said, now, you don't cut it, because now not only are you snake bit, you have 2 deep knife wounds. You have not improved the situation in 1 bit. So I throw that.
Yeah, okay, that's
that
fine.
Kind of helps the ice.
Yeah, you're not only dying of poison, you're bleeding to death too, right? That's good. Do you guys have a challenge? Anything? Anything that hadn't been mentioned? I mean, I'm sure we could go on.
They've all been mentioned.
Okay, all pretty much been mentioned. So here's what I want you to do though with a new Hunter Ed instructor or somebody that, if somebody is not a very good instructor, do you feel confident to sit down and talk to them about that, or is that tough? Can you get them to improve?
You can.
I don't want to, it is tough. But I want, and I've suggested if you're in a Hunter Ed team, that you get together, I don't know how often, some people teach every month, some people teach once a quarter, but I think if it's been a couple months, it would be really good if we just got together over at your house. Let's get everybody together, let's just run through this video, let's look at the workbook, let's talk about what Dave says on this, and maybe something will stick to someone that'll get a little bit better. The only person that I make watch this is a person that's never taught before. And I'm sorry, I know that sounds cold, but you're not going, unless you are already a speaker, I'm not going to let you stand up in front of a group unless you, number one, this is what I have a new instructor do. This may sound kind of cold. I don't know if you're going to like it or not. But I make them watch the video the entire 3 hours. I'd like to watch it with them if I could, just to make sure they really do it. I only let them teach one section in that class, one topic, the first time, and they have to give the topic to the rest of the team twice before they teach. Is that hard? Is that cold? Would you do it? Would you just say, you know what, forget it, I want to teach on Red, but forget it now. But you understand if you do all that, how much more prepared they're going to be and how much less nervous. And what I tell folks, when you teach a seminar, like I many times teach seminars that are 9 in the morning till 4 in the afternoon, and even though that's not 7 hours because there's lunch and breaks, but that's 5.5 hours that you divide up into 4 or 5 sections. If you're teaching 30 minutes on black powder, or you're teaching an hour-long section on bow hunting, or you're teaching survival for 40 minutes, you understand, I don't mean to be hard, and I know this would hurt evaluation scores, but you ought to be able to slam dunk 40 minutes on something. Do you understand that? I mean, it should be, and I don't like the fact that you teach the same subject all the time. I like it that you do teach different subjects, but you do have some that are better than others, right? But with a new person, I want them to feel really comfortable and like they're contributing to the team. I just think that people sometimes are so thankful volunteers do what they do, and I know this state couldn't survive without you, but people need to, if you're going to do it, don't you agree? Be good at it. You don't need to be a Zig Ziglar or something like that, but at least be decent at what you do. So let's look inside your workbook here. Go ahead and turn to page number 2. This is one of my favorite pages in the workbook. There's the top 10 list that you've probably heard of before, haven't you? 10 greatest fears in this country is, number 1 is speaking in front of a group. Can you believe that? Look at number 7. Isn't that weird? I mean, so you know the amazing thing about that, 7 is death. So what you're saying is when you go to a funeral, you'd rather be the one in the coffin than the one actually giving the eulogy. You're so afraid to speak in public. I believe that number 10 is snakes. That might even be a little bit higher on my list. I'm not sure. But what happens when people get nervous, you'll see something in the workbook called the fight or flight response. This happens to us naturally. It's a natural reaction. Have you folks ever been driving on the interstate highway, one of these roads, maybe the toll road, and the speed limit is 70, and I know you only go 70, right? You're 72, 73, lower? You go lower? You drive under the speed limit? Well, I can't talk to you, man. I can't even relate with you. Yeah, probably not. Okay, let's say you're driving the speed limit. It's 70 and you're going 70. You're listening to the radio, you're talking to the person next to you, you're not really paying attention to what you're doing, and you look in the rearview mirror, and right behind you are blinking lights. Have you ever seen that before? Before you even look at the speedometer, the first thing you do is that foot comes off the accelerator, the heart rate goes up, you start breathing hard, you break out into a sweat, and then you look at the speedometer and think, wait a second, I'm fine, I was going the speed limit. That's the fight or flight response. It's a natural reaction that happens when people get nervous. I've seen people have this develop in them. Have you ever heard the term butterflies before? Butterflies, I found out, are caused by an overabundance of adrenaline in your system, which causes the blood to leave your stomach area and go to your outer extremities. The lack of blood here causes the feeling of butterflies. If you've ever heard of people get their butterflies flying in formation again, I don't know, we're going to talk about what you do when you're nervous. Everybody does something different, but I pace, or I'll just breathe a little bit, or I'll try to calm down. If I can get my breathing back, I can calm down a little bit. You can control it, but it's a natural reaction for people to get nervous. And here's a couple things I want you to write on this page. the fight or flight response. There's actually 3 things I want you to write down here. The first one is your heart rate increases when you get nervous. Your heart rate increases, your blood pressure goes up, which is not good, and you tend to perspire, and some people perspire from difficult areas. If you look over on the next page, page number 3, now let me just say this. See where it says things to remember, 7 steps? These are things I do. Now, I don't know. Well, let me ask you this before I give you mine. Does anybody here, even though you're experienced, some of you have been doing this for years, correct? You still get nervous?
Every day.
Every day? How often do you teach?
Every day.
Are you a school teacher?
College.
Oh, really? And you get nervous even teaching? Well, I guess I'd be nervous about teaching college too. That's a tough thing, man. I have new respect for you right there. That's tough. What do you do to control your nervousness usually? Do you have something that you do over the years?
Get ready.
Be prepared? Know your stuff, right?
Know my stuff.
Okay, what else? Does anybody else have something that helps them overcome nervousness?
Mine's the breathing, getting my breathing
You
under
breathe?
control.
Do you like to be by yourself, or do you like to be around people when you're nervous?
When I'm nervous, I want to be alone.
You do? Just sit somewhere, get your thoughts, get your act together a little bit. Are you a pacer?
Not
Not a
really.
pacer? You just like to sit by yourself? I do that too. Let me tell you what mine are. I got 7 of them here. The number 1 thing on this list is to remember the audience is your friend. Okay? They're not in their underwear. They're fully clothed, but I just want you to know the people that you're talking to want you to succeed. Those people in your classes, don't you think the majority of those people, 99% of them, are looking forward to what you're doing? Do you occasionally get people that are forced to take a class for whatever reason, court ordered or something like that? But they're a minority, right? I mean, they're a small number. But I address it. I address people if they. Does anybody here not want to be here today? And some people will snicker and laugh. I just bring it out right in the open. It's not a big deal. I think you'll enjoy this class, whether it's 1 day, 2 days, 6 hours, 8 hours, however long you do it. I think you'll have a good time. We're going to have a lot of good experiences here today. Second thing on the list is positive self-talk. Don't talk yourself into a panic attack.
Positive.
Self-talk. And do you talk to yourself out loud? You look like a man that does.
I tell myself to shut up. What I like to do, I look everybody I possibly can in the eye on the way to the podium. It pre-introduces me.
Yeah.
Eye contact.
Yeah, eye contact? Okay, I'll go along with that. I did a thing at a college in the Northeast and had a PhD in psychology in my class. And she told me that talking to yourself out loud is normal. What a relief. She said you can talk to yourself out loud, ask yourself questions, and answer the questions, and that's all normal. I mean, that's pretty cool, isn't it? I mean, I'm thankful they came out with a Bluetooth, because now it just looks like I'm on the phone all the time, because I talk to myself all the time. I did about, let me tell you a story that I have here early in my seminar career. Now, you have to understand, this is my 3rd career. I've only been doing this for 17 years. I was a normal person, what I call normal. I graduated from college and worked in my profession for 10 years, 3 years in Chicago, then 7 years in North Carolina. Then I got this idea to be in my own business. Is anybody here in their own business? Okay. I wanted to be in the restaurant business, which was a huge mistake. But it led me to be a caterer. I moved to Hilton Head Island, South Carolina, and I catered for 12 years. And then somebody introduced me to Toastmasters. Have you ever heard Toastmasters before? It's an organization based in San Diego to help you overcome your fear of speaking in public. I went, and I loved Toastmasters, and I learned how to do seminars. And I decided to do seminars. At the age of 44, I changed careers. It's never too late. But I was asked to do a seminar how to supervise people at a consulting firm in Washington, D.C. Have you ever seen one of these rooms that you walk into it? The boardroom is mahogany, the walls are mahogany. The people that were there were older than I was. They were dressed better than I was, and I had a suit on with a tie. They had all been supervising people for 15 or 20 years, and I'm supposed to come in and show them how to do a better job of it. I looked at the HR person and said, "Could you show me where the restroom is before we get started?" I think I was kind of holding it together. They're looking very professional. The hands were getting clammy. And she said, it's down the hallway. And as I'm walking down the hallway, I'm talking to myself. Nobody else can hear, right? They're all back here. And this is what I'm saying to myself. This is going to be a disaster. What can you possibly do? I can't believe I got to be here for 7 hours with these folks. I'm going to be so embarrassed. By the time I got into the men's restroom, I thought I was going to pass out. Then I had the presence of mind to check under the stalls to make sure that nobody else was there. And I looked at the mirror and said, get a grip. Have you ever heard the term fake it till you make it? I said, listen to this. Now, this is what I want you to tell people, and for yourself too. I don't care how long they've been doing this. They don't know this topic like you know this topic. Do you understand that? I don't care how long somebody's been hunting. I don't care whether they've been hunting and they're coming from another state, or it's a young child who's never even held a firearm before. They do not know this book like you do. Is that true? They do not know that content like you do. Not that I'm a know-it-all, and you know other things that I don't about other stuff, but not about this. Now, I didn't tell them that, but I'm saying this to myself. I made myself, and I looked at have you ever talked to yourself in the mirror before? That's a weird experience. And I said, just go back out there and just do what you do, because here's my point. If you let the nervousness get to you, you've had it. I've talked to a room full of 600 people at a conference once. I'd never talked to 600 people before. And I didn't know it was going to be 600 people. I thought it was 200 people. And when I saw it was 600 people, I actually got a little bit nervous, even though I've been doing it for years, because it was a brand new keynote speech I'd never done before. But my mind said, they don't know what you're going to say. They don't know if you forget stuff. Isn't that right? Mm-hmm. They don't know the topic like you do. Just go be yourself and see what happens. And they loved it. So that's a big one. Positive self-talk is good. You can make a hell out of heaven or a heaven out of hell, depending upon how you look at things. Number 3 is meet the people. Now, this is something I do a little bit different than you do. I'm saying, Angela, what you do is great, but I like to get there and talk to people. I like to interact with folks a little bit. Sometimes I'm by myself and maybe I'll pace a little bit, but if I can meet some folks, somehow it just calms me down that now I have a smiling face in the crowd to look at and they nod at you. Your whole eye contact thing when you walk up, that's kind of the same thing. You kind of make a connection with somebody when you come up there. There's a guy by the name of Brian Tracy, has a series called The Psychology of Achievement. I saw this guy speak once, and he said something to me that sort of changed my whole view of this. He said, even when I talk to hundreds of people, I don't stand behind the stage. He said, I stand by the door that they walk in, and I just introduce myself to some of them. He said, because now you have a smiling face in the audience that knows you. And he said, if you've shaken somebody's hand beforehand, it's hard not to like a speaker who you've actually met. So I try to engage a little bit beforehand. I like to get there early enough to make sure I see the people. Do you get there early to make sure the people are there and you can move the tables and chairs? If there's a parent with a complaint, it's not a problem. Number 4 is to see the room beforehand. I know that many of you teach in the same facility, but I have talked recently to a lot of Hunter Ed instructors, and they are put in new situations they've never been at before, and they get there on the first day of the class completely unaware of the circumstances. What are the tables and chairs like? Is it air conditioned? Is there electricity? Is it open air? When I do a keynote speech at a conference and I get in at 10 or 30 or 11 or 11:30 at night, I make the people in the hotel open the room for me, and I just want to see it. Why would I want to see the room when I'm getting ready to go to bed? Why would you do that?
It takes the stress down.
Why? He said takes the stress down.
You're going
Why?
into an environment that you're familiar with as opposed to one that you
Yes,
have no
sir.
idea what you're walking
When
into.
I go in tonight and go to bed, I know, is there a wireless mic? Am I having to stand behind a lectern? Is there only? I've had it done before where I didn't do this, and I had a lectern with a mic. And you know, I'm a move arounder kind of a guy. Do you like to move when you talk?
Oh, yeah.
I'm stuck in one place for an hour and a half or 2 hours. Yeah, I can sleep. And then that way when I go down in the morning, I know if I'm going to make some changes or not. But see the room if you can. Number 5 is confidence. I want you to have confidence in yourself as a Hunter Ed instructor. And that comes, as this gentleman said earlier, from knowledge and being prepared. And number 6 is your appearance. Do you ever get drilled on appearance from people? Do they ever? Do you have when you teach? Do you have a guideline you want people to look like when you teach, or do you just kind of let them do whatever they want to do? Could I come dressed any way I want as long as I have something orange on or something with camouflage? Or do you have instructors' vests or do you have instructors' shirts?
Sure.
You have shirts and vests? Do you have a standard for people though? Here's my point. When somebody walks in that room, they ought to be able to look around the room and see who the presenters are. That's my point. My rule that I tell people is that you should dress a level above the people you're talking to. When there are some companies that I talk to in the business community and I will wear a suit and a tie. This is actually fairly dressed up for me to talk to a group of Hunter Ed people. I remember the first time I ever I've learned so much doing this. First time I ever was asked to speak to a group, it was, and I had done a presentation beforehand with a suit at a hotel to a committee to see if they wanted me to do this. I mean, it's normal, right? It's a DoubleTree. I thought it was normal. So a couple weeks later, I did the first seminar in Dodge City, Kansas. Ever been there? Dodge City? About 25 people in the room. I wore a suit and a tie. Hunter Ed instructors. I wore a suit and a tie. Is that embarrassing? Everybody in the room had on camouflage and orange ball caps and t-shirts. It was fairly apparent that I didn't practice what I preached. Now, let me just say this. Anybody can make a mistake, right? I can't explain it. I've been speaking for 9 years. I'm a huge person to find out who am I speaking to so I know I can dress appropriately. You understand that? How did I do this? I don't know. I made a joke out of it. I mean, if you're going to do something stupid, don't you think? Just make a big joke out of it. So the next week, I went to another town and spoke to a group of Hunter Ed people, Hunter Ed instructors. What do you think I wore? No, so I didn't wear camouflage. I should have. Jeans and t-shirt. Come on, man. You know it's not going to happen. I wore an older, sort of a tweed jacket of mine. It was older. It wasn't really new, but it was a jacket. Blue jeans, white button-down collared shirt. It wasn't super pressed, but it was white, and then my cowboy boots. And that was still probably a little overdressed, but it looked appropriate, and that's what I wore when I spoke to this group on and off for the next couple of years. The only reason I'm looking as nice as I am is for this. What did I say? What's my rule?
Just
a level above. Just think about that when you go out there. And so, you're going to have a new instructor who's going to look at you and say, well, what should I wear? And you should look at them and say, well, you want them to notice that you're the instructor when you walk in the room. Isn't that right? That's kind of what it is. Number 7 is to know the audience. Not know them personally, but I want to know, and I don't know if you can find this out. I know different organizations do things different ways, but how many boys, how many girls, how many men, how many women? I need to know just general age groups. I like to kind of know their attitude. Do they want to be there? Are they captives? What are their backgrounds? How long have they done this? Have they ever even handled a firearm before? Is that relevant information to find out even before you start? Now, I don't want to find out everything, because I do like to find out some of the stuff when I teach the class. I think it's kind of fun to talk to people about their background when you teach, but I think it's good to go into it with just a little bit of knowledge. And then the last thing, if you remember earlier, I want you to add an 8th one there. Or actually, I want you to add 2 more. Add an 8 and a 9. The 8th one is the one I mentioned earlier, that you know more than they do. I think it's a big thing for you to realize. Have confidence in your knowledge when you're talking. You don't need to memorize stuff, but I want you to know the material. And then the last one is, and I think this reflects what you said, sir, is know the material. Know what you're talking about. You don't have to memorize things and know everything. Do you have to be have you ever taught with a know-it-all before? There's nothing more irritating than people that think they have to know everything, because you don't. The only people that I really worry about are the ones that think they know everything, because that just means they really don't know anything. But I'll tell you something. Most of the folks you talk to are so relieved that you're speaking and they're not, they'll take pretty much anything. Just don't be awful. And then you can go uphill from there. Now, there's one more page I want to cover here, and then we're going to take a break. And this is, in my opinion, if you don't get anything else out of what we're talking about here, listen to me now with page 4 in this workbook. There's 3 words that absolutely guarantee your success when you speak. That's prepare, practice, and rehearse. When I first decided to make speaking as a career, I heard of a book, and I don't know if anybody here, well, you have speaking as a career, right? Yeah, you don't? But you're a teacher.
Yeah.
Is that different? Is a teacher different than a speaker?
Yeah.
That's your career, right? It is, really?
Well, I'm looking at a speaker more improvising.
Oh, is that right?
Teaching, having some material that you got ready.
Yeah, but teaching is speaking. Trust me.
It is speaking.
It's the same thing. When I decided to make it a career, I heard of a book called Speak and Grow Rich. You've heard a book called Think and Grow Rich, right? It was by Napoleon Hill years ago. This was written by two women called Speak and Grow Rich. How to make a career out of public speaking. Well, I had been catering for about 11 years and I was tired of it. And the Toastmasters experience was very intriguing to me. So I started reading this book, and there's two things when people come to me, and I coach people on this all the time, they say, I want to speak like you do. There's two things I tell people to do. And one of them is in the book and one of them isn't. The one thing I'll tell you that's not in the book that helped me out is they said in the book, you should speak as often as you can for free for 2 years to get your technique down. So, I didn't really have an opportunity. I wasn't a teacher to college or high school. I mean, if I was, it would have been great. But I had this idea to make 3 15-minute canned presentations on attitude, procrastination, and goal setting. They were great presentations. Actually, I've even written articles on these because they're things that people are always interested in, right? I called every Kiwanis Club, Lions Club, Rotary Club, Women's Group in a 3-town area. Is anybody here a member of one of those clubs? If you've ever gone, they always look for a guest speaker, don't they? They always look for somebody that can talk for 15 or 20 minutes. You don't get paid, but you get a free lunch out of it. I did that for a year. Finally, on one of the presentations, a person came up to me afterwards and said, you know what? We're having a conference in Charleston, South Carolina, which is about 2 hours north of where I was living at the time. They said there's going to be 225 people there, and we're looking for a keynote speaker on a topic close to what you're talking about here. They said, would you like to do it? We can't pay you anything. What would you say?
Yeah.
I said, yeah, I'll do it. I'll do it. I figured, why not? That's a big group, right? So I hired a camera guy, paid him. We drove 2 hours up, did this thing with a wireless mic and 2 hours back, and that gave me my tape to kind of get me started. My first bit of advice for people that really want to get good at it is, if you only teach Hunter Ed once or twice a year, it's going to be hard for you to really get good at it. You understand that? I mean, you can, but even if you practice and know your stuff, if you've ever taught classes a lot, you kind of get in a groove, don't you? You're going to get your program down. I mean, even over the holidays, there's 3 or 4 weeks that I don't present. As many times as I present, when you go, even me, 3 or 4 weeks without presenting, you get a little bit nervous when you get back up there. It's been a while, it's kind of like riding a bike, it all comes back. But the other thing they told me, are you ready for this? Now, this is what I want you to pay attention to. This is what I want you to pay attention to. Those 3 words right there, they said in the book, for every minute in length of your presentation, you should prepare, practice, and rehearse an hour. I can hear the moans and groans out there right now. I did the exact same thing. What do you think? It's not going to happen, is it? Okay, so let's step back a little bit. Okay, let's be real. I'm going to tell you something about myself that not everybody knows. My idea of balancing my personal checkbook is to go online and find out generally how much money is in the account. Is anybody else like me on that one? Okay, close. A little bit more, a little bit less than I thought, but it'll even out next month, right? There are some people that have to take the computer and the checkbook and account for every penny, which is crazy to me. But now, you want me to teach a class, 45-minute class on banking and finance at a conference. You want me to teach it. I could see that it would take me 45 hours. You get that? Because I know nothing about the topic. I would have to read, study, take a course. Now let's take a Hunter Ed instructor. Let's take a Hunter Ed instructor that's taught, they're just not very good. Do they know the topic? They pretty much know it, they're just not good presenting it, right? So they're going to teach a 45-minute section. They've taught it before. I'm going to give them a new section, but they kind of know a little bit about it. Prepare. The first thing down there is it's making notes, making an outline, doing a little research. Do you do your own PowerPoint presentation? Would you? Or do you use the one that's handed out to you? I would, okay, I'm going to say I want you to do your own. I want you to be creative. And don't look at me like that. You can just work with me here. But you can use that one, but if you did your own, if you had something that you wanted to show them, you're going to have to do your own slides. That's going to take a little bit of time. So, I mean, if you just look at researching, doing an outline, thinking a little bit, maybe download a couple videos from a site, maybe take some information from the newsletter that's out there, take some information from the PowerPoint they gave you, 45-minute presentation. You know, I probably have 5 hours into that right there, don't I, really? I mean, if I'm going to do it right. Then practice. That's different from rehearse. Practice is going over your open and your close. I don't want you to memorize the presentation, but I want you to have a smooth intro and a smooth close. I want you to study the material and know it. Know your notes and your outlines. That's going to take another couple hours. We're up to 7. Now, if you've never presented before, how many times did I say I wanted you to present to the team? I said 3 twice. 3 would be great, but they would never do it. So I want you to present. So that's 45 minutes, right? And then we'll give you feedback for probably 30 minutes. That's an hour and 15 minutes. Then I want you to present a second time based on our feedback. And then we'll give you more feedback. That's another hour and 15 minutes. So that's 2.5 hours on top of 7. So for a 45-minute, it's not 45 hours, but it's 10 hours, isn't it? Maybe less because you've been around the organization. You're probably still going to put in 5 or 6. So let's just say not an hour per minute, but 15 minutes per minute. And you know what? Almost nobody does that. I haven't taught in a couple months. I'm going to get a cup of coffee and I'm going to look over this stuff in the morning before I go out and do it, or I'm going to do it the night before, and then they're nervous. They forget stuff. They sweat. Their mouth gets dry. You understand what I'm talking about? There's so many ways to get around this. There's no reason in the world why somebody can't take a section and get really good at it. Now, if it's a new person, there's no option. You're going to have to do it. If you're experienced, but you're not very good at it, your ability to give them feedback depends on how they receive it. Isn't that right? Because some people can take it and some people cannot take it very good. I don't know, do you folks ever videotape yourselves sometimes just for the fun of it? You know what I'd like to do? I think you should say, the next time you teach, I think you should hand somebody your phone. Do you have a smartphone? And say, just record about 10 minutes of me. Just let me see what it looks like. Has anybody ever seen themselves on videotape before? It's awful, okay? It's the worst experience you've ever seen. I've watched about 10 hours of myself this year, and it takes me about 2 weeks to get my self-esteem back after I watch it, you know? But I mean, how else are you going to get better? Isn't that right? I think it would be interesting at the back of a room as a Hunter Ed team is to have people, listen, I'm going to present. I just am going to have one person do this. I do this sometimes at seminars. I want you to get a piece of paper out and make a list of LBs and NTs. LBs and NTs. They stand for things that you did that I liked best. Here's what you said during your presentation I liked. And here's what I think you should try differently, NT. That stands for next time. And you don't have to use them, of course. These are just suggestions. Now, I've done it for the associate pastor at my church in the past. Associate pastors don't get to preach very much, so they need some help when they do. And after this sermon, I'll say, that was a great message. Here's your list of feedback. What do you think about that? How do you think they handle that? They have to be nice, but I wonder if they even read the thing. Have you ever done that to your pastor before? Here's a couple things you liked. Here's a couple things I'd switch for next week if I were you. Listen, is there anything wrong with getting feedback? How are we ever going to get better if there's just not some feedback out there? So that's what that page is all about. So here's what I want to do. The next section we're going to go to, I'm going to give you a short break. Next section we're going to go to is a great section called Plan a Powerful Presentation, starting on page number 6. There's 9 steps. All right, so let's take a break. We'll come back in 5 minutes.